Hey there, how's it going? Welcome to the channel. So, today I'm doing something a bit different to what I would usually do on the channel, and it's something a lot more personal. It's something that I have shared very briefly before but never gone into. But in celebration of 1,000 subscribers, this is another new series type thing that I'm launching, the Why How series. It's a stupid name, I know, but I haven't exactly come up with a name for it. But in this series, I basically just go over why a certain piece of media is so important to me, why it's good, why it disappointed me. Basically, what I think of it and what it means to me on a personal level. And I thought there was no other appropriate way to start this series than to talk about my favourite game of all time, Final Fantasy VII, and the implications the game has had on my life, and better yet, how it has changed it and even saved it. So, it's a personal subject, like I said, one that I've only briefly shared in the past on the channel, but quite in depth to my friends. But I figured now it's time to talk about this and to see who else could relate to it, and also to teach people how video games truly can have a good positive influence on someone's life. So without further ado, let's mosey. So the journey really did begin back in 2017, which, mind you, is still relatively recent. That's when I purchased Final Fantasy VII on Steam. It was around the start of the year, January, February time. I only bought it because I knew it was a game that my uncle and my granddad loved to bits and pieces. It's one of their favourite games of all times, if not the favourite. It's one I've seen them play before, and I just wanted to see what the hype was really about, because I hadn't played a Final Fantasy game before, and I've only ever heard good things about them, especially this one. But I didn't actually get around to playing it until around April, and I put it off for a long time, probably because I didn't have much motivation to start any new games. I was too busy modding Sonic Generations at the time. But then again, I did get around to it in the end, and I don't know, I kind of regret not getting to it sooner. But anyways, when I did eventually get to it, my knowledge of the game was pretty limited, knowing basically Cloud from Smash 4 at the time, and well, despite being, unfortunate enough to not own him, I just knew he was in the game and where he was from. That's pretty much the extent of my knowledge in this situation. The only other things I knew about the game was that it was originally on the PlayStation 1, and that One Winged Angel originated in this game, not Kingdom Hearts, because I had played that series before Final Fantasy. Anyways, the game began and I was pretty much instantly hooked. The intro was great, it looks great for the time, it was hype, the music's awesome. I was just ready to go. I was pumped because I had finally gotten around to a game I wanted to play for so long. It took me some time to get used to the way the game played, in all honesty, as this was my first actual JRPG that uses the classic turn-based formula. The only other RPG that was turn-based that I had played before was Sonic Chronicles, the Dark Brotherhood on the DS, where back in the day, and well, we all know that the game isn't very good, but back in the day it was one of my personal favourites, not anymore. My first PlayStation stopped just before entering Aerith's house for the first time, so basically I got kind of deep, but not too deep. But the game left me wanting more, I was hooked, so, 2 to 3 hours deepish, like I said, and, I'm having fun, but that's it, just fun. I wasn't exactly into the lore just yet, I was just into the characters. It wasn't until later that the narrative actually drew me in. So we fast forward to the next day, I believe it was, when we arrive at Shimmer Tower for the first time, and I truly started to sink my teeth into the plot, other than just the characters. I was curious to know more about Midgar, about our cast, as well as the mysterious and all-powerful Sephiroth that had just been teased to us constantly and constantly. I played for ages that day, to be honest. It was probably from the morning to the night, and I ended up finishing the rest of Midgar. I stepped into the overworld map for the first time, and I had no clue what to do. I'm not kidding, I must have gone to the Chocobo farm like 100 times, then ran into thousands of random encounters along the way, but somehow never once came across Calm, the next part of the game. So I stopped. I'm not kidding, I stopped playing the game. I come back the next day to no success again, somehow. Before I was a teenager, I was an extremely stupid child, and I still am quite stupid today, in fact, but this was next level ridiculous, for stupid standards. But yeah, I just left the game. Seriously, I just left it after that, and I didn't come back to it for a whole year. And this is probably one of my biggest regrets ever. And I know it wouldn't have had many implication differences in a shorter amount of time, but it definitely would have had a more significant impact on me sooner. But at the same time, I am glad I left it for a few reasons, because when I eventually did revisit it, I had a different outlook on things at the time of life. I wasn't in the best state of mind either, and it was pretty much, it felt like a whole different experience, which is why I'm glad I kind of left it, because I looked at the game with a different mindset and a bit more maturely, in all honesty. So the Nintendo Direct swings around and graces the web again and announces that Final Fantasy VII will be arriving on the Switch in March, on the 26th, which is the date of my birthday. I was buzzing. Oh my god, it comes out on my birthday! It comes out on my birthday! I had an excuse to play the game again, wherever I wanted. So sure enough, March 26th rolls around and I purchased the game, cleared Midgard that same day, then left it until the next day. This time I actually found calm and was able to progress like fuck. As we find out about Nibelheim and the incident, everything that happened, my jaw was just completely dropped the whole time. I was in disbelief. I didn't expect things to be, this deep on such an emotional level. But I was very engaged with what was going on, and more importantly, I wanted to find Sephiroth so Cloud could take him down and rip out the bastard's spleen to ruin his L'Oreal Paris locks with. I looked up to Cloud at this point. He was brave, skilled, cocky, confident, slowly making friends with the party, and I was jealous of his huge-ass sword, since I only had a measly tiny keyblade above my bed frame at the time. But anyways, I was loving the characters and their interactions with one another. A group of misfits pulled together to form an alliance that is beyond powerful. They felt like my group of friends, just less realistic. And then things only got better as I came across the likes of Vincent and Sid. I never really cared much for Yuffie or Cait Sith, in all honesty. I do hope that the remake DLC on the PS5 can sell me on Yuffie for good, because I am not a massive fan, to this day, of Yuffie, no matter how many incarnations I go through. And I still don't know if I'll ever like Cait Sith outside FF7 Mission Abridged, to be honest, but oh well.
Then why, Kate? Why is your greedy corporate fat cat ass even here?
Because I fucking hate my job!
Anyways, we move on, and I'm drawn in even more when we see Sephiroth on the boat on the way to Costa del Sol, as this was the first time outside of a flashback seeing him. I wanted him dead, I wanted to fight him. And things look promising, but then we end up fighting Genova instead, which it still kept my interest because it's a key element to the plot. And not just because it was a hard fight as well, but because it was a good design. I really do enjoy the design of Genova. Going forward, I just became more drawn in. We learn more about each character and their origins. Barrett and Dine, Sid and Shinra, Vincent and Lucretia, Yuffie and Wutai, Nanaki, Cosmo Canyon and Setor, Bugenhagen. The Cosmo Canyon stuff being my personal favourite. But by far, the most interesting and impactful being Aerith and the Ancients, I didn't care much for Aerith at first. I'm being deadly serious when I say that. But as the game goes on and we learn more about her tragic past, her people and her role, and how she just interacts with the characters very differently to everyone else, I just become very attached to Aerith. She was playful yet shy at times, cheeky yet tempered. It was a blissful sight, seeing her and Cloud on a quote-unquote date at the Gold Saucer. The more I played, the more I fell in love with the characters, which is when the game truly had me. You see, I played the game properly during the spring and summer of 2018 when I was 14 years old during my third year at secondary school. This year was tough for me. Not only was school a bitch at the time due to my lack of confidence and being constantly picked on for being the quiet and the big kid, but it really drove my self-esteem into the ground. It's an issue that I've never spoken up about at all. And because of these issues, I actually stopped playing FF7 until the summer in order to stay stable. I started playing it around the start of the spring, and then I just had to stop until summer rolled around because I had to take away everything from the real world and find a method to cope within the walls of school while continuing education, not thinking about anything irrelevant towards the education, and finding a way around avoiding being bullied. It's not an easy task, and I do feel for anyone that's been in that position because I certainly have been there. But by the time the school year had ended, I was done for. My brain was melted, knowing I had the pressure of my final exams being less than 2 years away and the course already being, started. I was feeling really overwhelmed, and we live in a day and age where you can contact anyone from anywhere, so with all the dickheads in my year continuing to torment me over social media during the summer, I decided to just lock myself away during this time, go offline a lot, and just enjoy myself independently, which is where I picked up my independence and learnt it from. Not to rely on others all the time, and not to think that everyone is our friend. We need to know our enemies, and this certainly did teach me that. But regardless, I got back to FF7 where I left off, the Temple of the Ancients, which was near the start of a turning point for me and the game. And of course the game goes on as normal, but seeing Cloud slap the shit out of Aerith really made me question things. Even though he was under Sephiroth's control, I was still really confused at why this was in the game, but above all else I was angry. It wasn't a pleasant sight. Knowing how much these characters like one another and how much they mean to me at this point already, it just wasn't fun to watch. It was really upsetting. But after this happens, we go to find Aerith after she runs off to the City of the Ancients, and well, we all know what happens next. I knew there was an infamous scene in this game, but I didn't know what it was. I assumed it was when One Winged Angel started to play. Because of my knowledge on Kingdom Hearts, I figured it would be a surprise Sephiroth fight. I was very, very wrong, and I didn't expect this at all. My emotions were going crazy seeing Cloud almost kill Aerith to begin with, but to then see Sephiroth do it instead, in an equally as violent manner, I was just very shocked, briefly. Because the second that shock disappeared, and I had my head back and my thoughts in check, all I remember was just looking at the screen of the Nintendo Switch full with tears coming down my face. I was struggling to see, my eyes stung. Hearing her theme play over the gameplay that follows, it was just a real stinger. And I couldn't focus on the Genova battle at hand either. Aerith's death is something that's been discussed heavily for almost 25 years now, so I won't ponder on it for much longer. But it had been a long time at this point since I really experienced any sort of loss. My dog had passed away 2 years prior, and my dog was my best friend. Anyone who's had a dog and had a bond with that dog knows what it's like when it passes away. But this still hits like a truck, and it's not something that feels like it's connected to you, but at the same time it does. It's not real, and it's just fiction, but when you get so attached to something, you just can't help but feel for it. And that was the case here. At this point I was still a stranger to loss, but seeing such a lovable character and someone that meant quite a lot to me at this time die in front of all of their friends like the way she did, it was soul shattering. It taught me what loss was like, considering I hadn't really experienced it for well over a decade. And it genuinely did make me cry, which I hadn't done to a game since finishing Kingdom Hearts 1 back in 2016. But, this was a different type of tear. It wasn't a mix of joy, relief, sadness and excitement. It was just despair. Pure despair. Aerith's death is a moment in history that I will never forget. Not just for what it did to me, but how it affected my thought process, and how it brought back my sense of humanity by teaching me to accept sadness. So the next day I decided to pay a visit to Grandad and told him about the progress I've been making with the game, and I told him how I felt during Aerith's scene. He told me that he and my uncle back in the day had the exact same reaction back in '97 when they first played the game. It was reassuring to hear it, but at the same time it was just as heartbreaking, because it really does show that this scene carries enough weight to affect almost anyone, including some of the strongest people I know. It really allowed me to see the genius that is the story and how it is formed around its cast. The cast is the most supporting part of the story. But the show goes on, so I carry on with the game the following day. And I'm not feeling it, in all honesty. Like, the game going forward just felt different. Without Aerith's wit, it felt really different, and knowing that she is gone, it just kind of pondered, and I don't know how to feel about it. But during the northern map sections, I really wasn't digging the game at all. It just wasn't interesting me like the rest of the game had so far, which was confusing to me because, well, it's almost like Disc 2 was just doomed to be poor, but I was kind of wrong, I suppose. I still don't like Disc 2 much to this day. You know, the huge materia plotline is terrible. The minigames suck. It's basically a load of filler crammed into minigames, but the only things that I do like are the weapons, and also the next topic to discuss actually, which is Cloud's fall into limbo. Which, well, see, when I first saw Cloud submit to Sephiroth and hand him the black materia, I was beyond confused at this point. I thought Cloud was stronger than this. You know, a man so powerful brought to his knees so easily. You know, seeing Cloud being emotionally damaged wasn't too good for my tiny little brain. It made me see him as weak, not masculine. And then moving forward, we then see him paralysed in a wheelchair, which at first, it's a visual that made me chuckle, but soon became a sad sight, knowing that one of my favourite characters had been reduced to this. And it also reminded me of someone that I knew who passed away just last year, which was also a bad reminder of that even today. But it is when he falls into the live stream that truly opens my eyes to humanity itself. And I don't mean this in like some type of worshipping Satan way, God no. It turns out that we've been living a lie this whole time. Upon playing this segment and learning that Cloud had a childhood so rough he felt like he needed to be someone else to get attention. You know, that he wanted to join Soldier and make first class, which he never did. Instead only making general military, which is why he hides his identity from his friends. But it's here where we first learn about Zack Fur, a character who would become beyond important to me in the future. You know, we learn that Cloud basically took his identity and memories but claimed them to be his own while fabricating the cool guy attitude. It was hard to, it was a hard pill to swallow, to see Cloud being the fraud. But after some time, I got on with the game and beat it the next day, and that final Still of Aerith seriously choked me up. The credits really allowed time to think, to reflect on the journey, but unexpectedly and most importantly reflect on me and my life. It was at this point I compared myself to Cloud. You know, I didn't really know who I was. I had formed an identity and attitude to try and blend in with the crowd, to be noticed by the other kids at school, by other people online. And it wasn't a good idea, but I went with it and it worked, and that's all I saw as important, to have attention, to be this cool guy that everybody liked. But, this however centered into my brain that I was this cool kid who is hard and will fight anyone, which was far from the truth at the time. I was scared and I felt alone, lost, a lack of confidence still. But Final Fantasy VII allowed me to remember who I really was, and it taught me something, to just be me. And that is a very, very valuable thing that I took away from this game. Who cares if this person seems cooler in your mind or the next person's? Who cares if it just, didn't quite hit that target? Just be yourself. At the end of the day, it's the love and support from your friends and family that matter. You don't need to impress them all. It's about you and your circle and knowing your enemies. So by the time I returned to school for year 4, I was feeling great. I dropped the attitude, the fake persona, and I was just myself. It's something that a lot of people did pick up on. But I didn't want to bore them with the story because I didn't think they'd be interested, and they wasn't, in all honesty. So I kept it simple, and when they asked me why I have changed so much, I just, in a nutshell, told them that wasn't me, and now this is me. And I didn't take a single one of my friends going forward for granted. I appreciated every last thing, and it was the start of a new me. But like I said, it was only the start. My thirst for Final Fantasy VII just continued. I would do anything to replay the game. But who knew at this point when the remake would release, so I decided to do some research and came across the compilation, Advent Children, Crisis Core, Dirge Cerberus Before Crisis, Dirge was the last thing I visited, and it left very little impact on me, so I'm not going to talk about it apart from the fact that it still has a sour taste in my mouth today. But before Crisis, I had watched a long play of because I can't get a hold of it anywhere. I watched Advent Children in its complete edition, back to back for a few days, and I was loving it. But it was then I got my copy of Crisis Core, the game to solidify the new me. Zack Fair. Didn't know much about him apart from he was who Cloud thought he was, and that he did play a major role in, the story. And bear in mind, I hadn't found the secret cutscene in the original game of Zack's death. I wasn't aware of his connections to Aerith, and I didn't know he was dead. I thought he was just retired somewhere else, which is why we never really got mention of him, because he'd been so long gone. But Crisis Core was my rollercoaster of 2019. I learnt so much about Zack, Cloud, Aerith, Sephiroth, Shinra, all the lot. I even felt some sympathy for him. Sephiroth, that being Aerith and Zack, was just a precious bond, with Cloud's bromance being just as adorable. The Angeal stuff was emotional, yes, but it didn't hit me as much until I saw it affect Zack. Aerith coming up behind him and hugging him from behind to show support, to show that there are people out there that do care for you. And this is, I was going to bring this up later, but I'm going to say it now before I forget. But this is a exact parallel of what happened last year when I was at my lowest point when a relative died. Someone so important to me that I didn't feel like I did enough for. That one special person, the Aerith to my Zack, came up behind me and gave me that exact same hug. And it just flashed in my mind at that moment, that scene. And they know very well of that scene because they have played Crisis Core, and I'm pretty sure that's what they were going for. And I know they're watching this. You absolutely succeeded, and you just completely cheered me up for the rest of that night. It was great. It really was a flashback, but a good one. But a few weeks pass, I eventually do finish the game, and watching Zack's death was quite easily one of the hardest things I've ever had to watch, even still to this day. It was just painful, very painful. I love Zack to bits, and saw why Cloud looked up to him. I just cried for the rest of the night, but after that stopped, I hit a judgment. Zack Fair became my hero, my inspiration. I aspire to be like him even today still. I helped others, looked at life in a different way, had a joyful attitude, saw the bonds of friendship even more, become sociable, confident, had energy. I always stay positive as much as I possibly can. Zack helping me find new light and meaning to my life. He taught me to be a better person. He taught me to be myself, but don't be afraid to strive for greatness. Zack didn't just become a hero at the end of Crisis Core, he became my hero. So we fast forward to 2020 and it all comes full circle when Final Fantasy VII Remake hits store shelves, and I love every damn second of it. But despite me singing the praises of Remake to death already, that's not my highlight of 2015, no. Around 5 days after Remake's release, I made a post on Facebook about being in a reaction compilation to Zack's death as I uploaded my reaction to YouTube, and someone left a comment. They shared their experience with this moment, and I was completely blown away. Someone has actually played FF7 and its compilation, and I didn't really know them. I just added them a while back just to find them attractive, which, yeah, I know is kind of creepy, but hear me out, I was young. And I decided to talk this person in messages literally the following day to talk with them about Remake and Final Fantasy VII in general. What follows this talks about the original Crisis Core and things like that. But at the end of the day, it all came back to us, and how I reminded them a lot of Zack, and how they remind me a lot of Aerith. It sounds made up, it really does, but this was symbolism of what was to come. And a month later, this person would become my girlfriend, and they still are today. We are approaching our 1 year anniversary. My soulmate, who I am still with, and I will be forever, I hope. The best person to ever come into my life, fixing all my mental problems, being there by my side since the day I met her in person, since the day I first messaged her. And going forward, it's just a matter of time until the game changes my life even more. Final Fantasy VII has done a lot for me. It's taught me to be myself. It's taught me to treat our planet with respect, to have dreams, to remain mature, to be positive, to embrace those dreams, to maintain my bonds of friendship, to love, to show my emotions, to forget gender stereotypes, and above all else just to be human. Final Fantasy VII, it saved my life during the darkest of times. Not only was it my comfort food, but it changed my outlook on life and humanity, giving me a reason to continue down the path that is life. It genuinely refined me, because I wasn't thinking of continuing down that path. It allowed me to find my first simultaneous true love. It even inspired the content format you see on the channel today. Final Fantasy VII has brought me more than I could have ever imagined. The reason I own a Buster Sword replica isn't just to look like a nerd or a badass or to show off. It's to remind me of the game, and it's a symbol of hope, dreams, and what changed my life and saved it. Something I can look at to remind me why I am who I am today. I have Final Fantasy VII to thank for it all, and in all honesty, I wouldn't have it any other way.